last week of the bye. Just one more to make it through before getting all of your choices available to you. Hey, how are you? Jason Horowitz with you on the Chase Fantasy Football Series, exclusively here on CBS SportsLine. It's Stardom Situm. Those who senior fantasy writer Jamey Eisenberg thinks are the best bets heading into Week 9. And remember, plenty more than just on this show. And for all those, be sure to check out Jamey's articles throughout the weekend. All right, let's get into it and start with the teams on a bye like we do every week. Carolina, Philadelphia, Arizona, and the Jets, the last teams to have byes. So remember, a couple of quarterbacks you can't use in Jake Delhomme or Donovan McNabb. You got to take out Steve Smith, Anquan Bolden, Ryan Westbrook. Make sure you set your lineups before Sunday. And we welcome in CBS senior fantasy writer Jamey Eisenberg from Miami. Jamey, let's dive right into this and start with the quarterbacks to start. And we're going to go with Michael Vick and Rex Grossman this week. Michael Vick is at Detroit. Last year against the Lions, 2 touchdown passes and 57 yards on the ground in the Thanksgiving Day game. And Rex Grossman off a huge 3-touchdown day against San Francisco. Now he gets Miami also at home. How about the quarterbacks to sit? Damon Heward, he had a big day, but at St. Louis, he's on the road. Maybe not necessarily a good choice. They're going to try to run the ball. Mark Brunell against Dallas. He may not have Clinton Portis or Santana Moss, so that's the reason you have Mark Brunell on the bench. Jamey, talk to me about these. How much, when you're deciding what quarterbacks to play, do you take into account who's home and who's away?
You certainly have to take into account who's playing at home and who's playing on the road. I mean, Damon Heward and Rex Grossman are 2 perfect examples. Rex Grossman, you saw his worst game was at Arizona Monday night. Was expected to be a big game for him against a bad team, but he really didn't do anything. And then he comes back after a bye week at home, and he gets right back on track. He's coming off a good game, and he's playing at home again. So certainly you got to like him whenever he's at home. No interception so far at home, so he's playing great. And then Damon Heward is another guy. He's played so good at home, and he's been sort of shaky on the road. And I think they have a guy named Larry Johnson there, if I'm not mistaken. So they're probably going to run him a lot against the Rams.
What we saw what the Chargers did with LaDainian Tomlinson to the Rams defense, I think Larry Johnson, that is the same game plan. After all, he did have 39.
Yeah, that guy's pretty good as well, that Tomlinson guy.
Yeah, 1 and 2 in running back so far. All right, speaking of running backs, let's go to our best bets there, your best bets to start at running back this week. And you see a Patriots logo there. That is Corey Dillon and Lawrence Maroney. The Colts dead last stopping the run, the only team in the NFL giving up more than 5 per carry, dead last against the run. Also, Chester Taylor at San Francisco, and Fred Taylor, we'll go with the Taylor boys here, he's home against Tennessee, who is second to last in stopping the run. How about the running backs that Jamey has to sit? Wally Lundy, he's had a couple of good weeks. He's at the Giants this week. Willie Parker home against Denver, and Ronnie Brown at Chicago. He's been one of the more disappointing guys so far in the Chicago D, just 1 rushing touchdown allowed this season. Jamey, let's talk about the starting running backs. Off Monday night performance, neither Corey Dillon nor Lawrence Maroney, and Chester Taylor for that matter, none of those guys really had good weeks. Why are they good starts this week?
Well, it's strictly a matchup thing. I think Bill Belichick, New England's coach, is a genius at preparing for a team, and he knew that the running game was not going to work against Minnesota, so he had Tom Brady throw the ball 40-plus times. This week, he knows he's facing a bad run defense. You're going to see a situation like you saw in Week 1 for the Patriots against Buffalo, where both guys, Corey Dillon and Lawrence Maroney, are probably going to be involved, probably going to have a situation to put up a lot of yards, maybe a couple touchdowns, 1 for each, or a situation where Dillon gets the touchdowns and Maroney gets the yards. The same thing with Chester Taylor. They just got behind, and they weren't able to use the running game, which is their strength. I think after Brad Johnson's bad performance, you're going to see Minnesota go back to feeding Chester Taylor against a bad San Francisco defense, and this is like a bounce-back game for him, a chance for the team to get back on their winning ways.
Jamey, you have Willie Parker as one of your guys to sit. Tell me why. I know Denver has a great rush defense, but Pittsburgh had a hard time throwing the ball. You don't think Pittsburgh's going to try and establish the run again this week at home?
They're absolutely going to try and establish the run, but I think that's Denver's strength, is to stop the run. Last week against Indianapolis, I think you saw a lot of defensive backs on the field. They're going to go back to, with they're very good linebackers, they're good defensive front, and you're going to see a situation where Denver's really going to focus on making Ben Roethlisberger beat them. And I don't think it's going to happen. I think Willie Parker is going to really struggle this week. He may get into the end zone, but that's hard to predict. But just in terms of the yards, you got to really stay away from Willie Parker this week.
All right, let's go to the wide receivers that you have to start. And we'll start with a guy who had a touchdown. As you said, hard to predict, but he did have a touchdown last week against Tampa Bay. Plaxico Burress home against Houston. Javon Walker in that same game as Willie Parker. He's at Pittsburgh. And T.J. Hushmanzada at Baltimore. More on him in a second. How about the wide receivers to sit this week? Braylon Edwards at San Diego, just 7 catches for 54 yards in the last 3 games. And with a new offensive coordinator, they're focusing on running the football. Chris Chambers at Chicago, he's another one of your sits. And Santana Moss home against Dallas. Now, you've got him on here because he represents the injury bug. He may or may not play. It's one of those things where you're looking at as you have to look at your lineup to see if Santana Moss is going to play come Sunday. But talk to me about these guys to sit. Javon Walker and Santana Moss. Talk to me about those two guys.
Well, Javon Walker as a start certainly is a good matchup because Pittsburgh likes to blitz. They leave a lot of guys in man-to-man coverage, and I think it's going to be situations. Walker, as bad as Jake Plummer has been, Walker's still been very productive. You know, he had a touchdown last week against the Colts. He's been getting, you know, right around the 6-7 catch range. So certainly he's been the #1 guy, and he's been, you know, very serviceable as a #2 wide receiver fantasy-wise. In terms of Santana Moss, anytime a guy is injured and starts to miss practice, you never want to play him, and he's been one of those guys that's been hard to predict anyway. So you never could really. He's a hard guy to count on. And so playing against Dallas with a banged-up situation, you just want to kind of stay away.
Real quickly here, T.J. Hishmanzada is at Baltimore. Normally you think of the Ravens, you think of defense. But people are throwing on the Ravens. Drew Brees just had a 380-yard day.
Yeah, certainly they seem to fall into that situation of great defense, but they give up the big play. And Cincinnati's offense is predicated on the big play with those 3 receivers, with Chad Johnson, Hishmanzada, and now Chris Henry. And I think it's going to be a situation where Johnson gets taken away by Chris McAllister, and Ed Reed probably falls to that side. It's going to be a situation, you know, Palmer loves Hishmanzada. He's been great so far this season, and I think he's the guy that has a big game this week against the Ravens. All
right, Jamey, the user's looking for a good week from your advice, but, you know, Jamey's not done. For more of his advice, be sure to read his articles as well as Dave Richards all throughout the weekend. Jamey, we'll talk to you soon. Good luck this weekend.
You bet. Have a good one, Jason.
You too. All right, folks, that'll do it for Stardom Sit-em here on the Chase Fantasy Football Series. But for more fantasy advice, like I said, be sure to read Dave or Jamey Eisenberg exclusively here on CBS SportsLine. Good luck in Week 9. Hope you get to 9-0 or at least somewhere around there. I'm Jason Horowitz. Take care.